with my good friend DJ here, who's in Canada, and I'm in Thailand. We're gonna talk about nurturing in the Dhamma. So DJ, what does nurturing mean?
What does nurturing mean? I think it's that, aiding sort of in that development and coming at it from, well, actually, when we work with like congratulations, that's part of like the nurturing, right? We're nurturing the skill development to have it grow from this place of kindness, so it's quite beautiful. So as opposed to perhaps always being super hardcore and firm, though maybe sometimes there is times to be a little bit firm, it's coming from, like, again, this kindness, from this place of nurture. So that's a little bit of a, I suppose, introduction into the nurturing aspect of it. Yeah, what does it mean for you, Michael?
Yeah, generally does mean at least starting gently with yourself. And even if one is nurturing in a more firm way, that is still brought about gently, kindly, softly, maybe even slowly, or with patience, we could say.
Yeah, it's that like caring for as well, I suppose, as opposed to caring about. Like, we care for this moment, we care for this breath, for this being here and for other beings. But as opposed to being like, oh, we need to care so much about this. We care so much about the practice. And then what we do is like beat ourselves up and get like super, angry and frustrated or whatever can happen. And so it's rather just having that gentle, nurturing voice of being like, hey, that's all right. Okay, it's cool to see that. This is a beneficial thing. I think that's another thing that's quite nurturing, is noticing the benefit and going back to that congratulations of like, yeah, you know what? This is a beneficial thing, right? So lovely. Yeah.
Yeah, word nurture and nature. I don't think it's a coincidence they sound similar, but I'm not too knowledgeable on the root origins there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is sort of definitely important part of the practice, is bringing it back to nature, throwing it back to nature. And there's also that recognition that, oh, wow, already being nurtured.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some unwholesome thoughts happening or whatever, but you made it this far.
Yeah. There's another aspect too that's really beautiful, which is coming at this from like the attitude as well of a champion and a winner. Like, okay, we can provide the nurturing here. So rather than being like, oh, I need to go to this person, I need to go to mommy and daddy in order to get this nurturing, we can provide this nurturing here. And it's far more reliable than like anything else, because it's like, oh, we can bring that up here and now, right? And so that's sort of another beautiful aspect, is like, you know, having that attitude of a champion, while working with the nurturing quality as well, and how they can go hand in hand. Yeah. And like you were saying, you throw it all back to nature, right? So the whole dichotomy of nature versus nurture, it's like, no, it's all just nature playing it out. It's all just doing its thing. But what's cool is, yeah, we can see that, and we can develop the mind. We can cultivate the mind to be able to rest, more and more with that. So yeah, all these kind of mechanical or conditional things that are thrown in through various different things simultaneously, the nurture, so the upbringing, as well as the nature, just like whatever it is, it's all these things coming together and all these different conditionings, but via this practice of nurturing and, thinking nurturing thoughts and just straight up being nurturing, we can kind of help to see those clearly and abandon the ones that are unwholesome and rest with nature the way that it is. And that's where we come to, yeah, this is satisfying enough. This is cool enough. Yeah. Yeah. Abandoning the cravings.
Yeah, this is a really worthwhile thing to reflect on. And yeah, just, I mean, that's what's so beautiful about nature, is that it's all around us. Uh, there's also been this kind of dichotomy that people were create of like nature versus society, or like nature versus computers, or nature versus robots, this sort of thing, or nature versus man. Um, but even in those processes, there's nature there too. Uh, there's kind of the nature of computers, the nature of societies, and the way that they function. What brings about dukkha is when we become dissatisfied with the way those things are presenting themselves, basically, or how we're taking them in. But if we can accept, like, oh yeah, of course, societies are going to change and fall away, and they're not ours. They don't really belong to any one party or king or person. And same thing with computers, and of course, nature itself.
Yeah, that's interesting that you bring up that sort of like perceived split when it comes to nature, right? And like how we can see things like as computers as like separate. But again, when we kind of have this more broad eye understanding of nature and reality, it encompasses all these things, right? It's the whole of it. And so, yeah, one can be like, oh man, I love nature and I hate these computers, and be all upset because, the state of the world and there's all these computers everywhere, you know?
About car engines.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's part of the practice though, is it's like nurturing, the mind to be chill with the way that, reality is. Of course we can make wholesome changes, but not the idea of these like big whole changes that are made like immediately, right? Or whatever, in terms of like trying to change something like society, or something. It's like, no, all of that is very incremental, and having your contentment, having your happiness, having one's ability to be satisfied based on these things is unreliable, right? And so being able to be like chill with the way that reality is right now is helpful, and then we can care and nurture for it step by step, as opposed to like this big sort of thing, you know. And sometimes computers can be tools to that. We're using computers right now to communicate, so it can be a tool, right? Doesn't necessarily have to be a hindrance, right? It's just being aware. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very natural conversation.
Yeah. But yeah, nurturing these qualities, yeah, of mind, nurturing, remembering to be aware, to take a look, to make a wholesome change, and to recognize the changing nature of reality itself. Yeah, that is constantly in flux. So coming and going.
Yes.
Yeah. It's wonderful, yeah, to be able to like see that and have that nurturing attitude though, where it can become soft and gentle and easy and it doesn't need to be this like hardcore thing. We can just take it easy and see how, oh yeah, this is changing. That's all right. Instead of like, oh my gosh, this is so terrible, everything's changing, it's all falling apart, it's awful, right? And for one, not only is it awful, but I have to feel awful because of it. So we can see that and be like, oh no, good for recognizing that. Now we can wake up and just chill with what is, right? It's like, yeah, everything changes, but that's okay. That's just the nature of reality. So,
Yeah, there's no need to be so serious about it.
yeah. And nurturing this playfulness, yeah, when we kind of back out, we can view, life as a play. We don't have to be so hardcore and serious about it all the time. Or even if we are, we can notice the play in that, but we don't really have to go there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very much so like a Zen master or something like that. Being serious in a playful way.
Yeah.
We hit students with the stick.
Yeah, no, that's a good thing to bring to mind. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, like a Zen master, it's just like, yep, I'll whack you with a stick. But there can be this like playfulness to it. Yeah, that whole playfulness and nurturing those qualities makes it so that one is more inclined to practice too. At least that's what I found here. And like when practicing like something like anapanasati and getting into seclusion, I find it really beneficial by being like, oh, well, you know what? Just by getting into seclusion, a lot of the work's already done. And then like, like this is like 90% of it, and the other 10% is just being like, oh, okay, bring up wholesome thoughts, one wholesome thought after another, and then just resting with what is, so not a ton needs to be done, it's just one thought at a time,
Yeah,
changing the attitude. Oh yeah,
I would
sorry.
add that it's
Yeah.
getting into seclusion, getting comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
One funny part is difficult, you
Yeah.
know. Even that is still a game, It's still, and I tell people that it's like, even for a monk, they have to sometimes play the game of finding seclusion, of getting into seclusion. You go to these spots and they'll have big festivals and loud music playing, and
Yeah.
uh, there can be all sorts of things that come up, funerals, weddings, what have you. It's just like, well, there's ways to find seclusion when that sort of stuff is going on too.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's also like nurturing, right? Like the internal mental seclusion in a way. But
Yeah,
having the physical seclusion is beneficial for that from time to time. But yeah, like you're saying, it's like finding this perfect idealized like form of seclusion sometimes isn't the most reliable thing, right? So it's like working with what you got. This is why
yeah,
sometimes too when here in the house, sometimes folks will be watching movies, so sometimes I'll just like listen to rain sounds or something. It's a nice compromise. It's like, oh, okay, cool. Like if you were out in a hut.
into
It's,
nature by going on YouTube and
yeah, exactly.
ambient forest sounds. Yeah.
It's a little bit more quiet, I suppose, than like listening to a horror movie. But sometimes, sometimes, just hearing the sounds of sounds can be helpful too. Like having that playfulness, kind of getting away from, oh, it has to be like this every time and strict rules. I mean, even if rules are being brought into it, there can be a playfulness with that, like you're playing a game. So I find that to be helpful as well. Yeah. But yeah, the relaxation, like nurturing that is also, like you mentioned, quite a bit of it as well. Just relaxing the body, relaxing the mind, taking it easy. Yeah.
You had mentioned mental seclusion and physical seclusion. How do those differ in your practice?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like physical seclusion, it's just like getting, I suppose, in one way it's getting away from like the technology. It's mostly just finding a quiet place in my room and like sitting there where there's very low, you know, stimulation, right? In terms of like external. And then that's pretty much like the physical aspect. And then the mental is more like internally being like secluded. I mean, really, it's part of that's the wisdom. So even while watching something or engaging with something, there's still that aspect of mind where it's like, okay, this is going to fall apart. This isn't reliable. We can be satisfied without this, but still able to appreciate what arises. So it's like that sort of the thing is like being able to appreciate it. Kind of comes back to the liking it but not wanting it kind of deal. But it's still having that sort of ongoing wisdom of like, oh yeah, no, like ultimately one can be satisfied here and one can be satisfied in seclusion when none of this is going on. So it's like kind of playing with that medium, I suppose, but staying guarded in that regard, yeah, is I find to be beneficial.
Yeah.
But yeah, I find the practice of like physically getting into seclusion to some degree to be helpful because it's like, oh wait, we can be content and satisfied with like very little, because the point is that yeah, the content and the satisfaction that's dependent upon any of these things, it's just like not reliable. And it's really wonderful like how how one can just return to this joy and this satisfaction and these feelings of success with like nothing going on. It's quite beautiful. So appreciating the time that I can spend doing that, it's wonderful.
Yeah, it's open the mind uh, to what's really going on. Because when I've found whenever I'm not in seclusion, especially if I'm like talking with people or in a group of people or this sort of thing, uh, there's not as many mind moments spent on like, well, what's actually being thought,
Yeah.
like, is this a wholesome thought? It's just it kind of defaults more so back to like that programming of just kind of thinking and thinking and thinking. And same thing with breathing. I've found, in physical seclusion, it's a lot easier to be sensitive towards the breath because there aren't like these loud noises or could call lots of imagery or even yeah, just being secluded from like you're not like smelling you're not smelling the pizza in front of you or something like that. Having very little for the senses to go off of. It's like, oh, okay, now we can really hear and listen to the body. Um, it's not so much, oh, when we're getting into seclusion, we're cutting everything off or we're cutting off the senses. It's really more like we're giving ourselves a chance to really get into reality uh, and what's happening moment by moment in this particular moment, you know, of this current reality that we're experiencing.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Yeah, really nurturing that opening up of, in a sense, we get more in tune with the senses, being aware of what we're, hearing and feeling, thinking. Yeah, like, yeah, developing, yeah, that ability to remember to be aware of these things. So, like, again, it's like there's less, maybe, in a way, distractions, but at the same time it's like it opens up this whole world of experience that sometimes is neglected also. So yeah, it's cool. I think it's wonderful to kind of alternate back and forth a bit. Like it's kind of good to do that depending on one's lifestyle, but
Right.
there can be benefit to that. But yeah, it's like nurturing those skills in seclusion, is quite helpful for opening up the mind to be more in tune. Like, how is the body actually feeling right now? And yeah, if we're having a conversation, that it's, there's an extra thing added. Again, we still have the ability to come back to like, hey, what's going on right now, and paying attention, with our speech. Yeah, and to still be aware of the breath, but it's sort of like a general, there's a little bit more to focus on. Whereas if we get into seclusion, it's like, okay, we're just here in seclusion with the thoughts, with the feelings, with whatever the breath is, doing, and we can relax and really yeah, collect the mind around that.
Yeah, that is the thing about seclusion, is it really is nurturing. It's comforting.
Yeah, that's
Now,
the thing. Yeah,
to it, there may be some discomfort there or what have you, but I would say it's naturally comforting.
yeah. Well, yeah, it's like, actually, when we understand it more and more, it's enjoyable, right? To get into seclusion and to just be able to completely unwind, and also to, another thing is, it kind of shows us that second noble truth, right? So we can nurture our understanding of that, because then we can kind of see where the unwise, desires come from, right? And like when they arise, right? Because it's like, oh, well, we want to have this thing, or say there's some song that's, I've been noticing this too, if like, listening to music, some song will pop into, my head, or into the mind, right? And noticing that song, right? And just being okay with that song playing in the mind, not being like, oh, I need to keep it, or I need to get rid of it, or what have you, right? But the thing is, like, needing to go get it, right? So it's like we get contacted by whatever it is mentally, and then being like, oh, I got to go listen to that, right? But noticing, well, we don't need to listen to that right now. We can just be happy, having it play in the mind, or just, and come back to another object and enjoy that too. Come back to the breath, come back to how good it feels to breathe right now.
And it feels so good to breathe right now.
Yeah. Wow, this is nice, But it's, again, and it's just that unwise desire that kind of brings to this comparison mind that, oh, an experience out there would be better than this experience right here. Like, it's just like, because we want more and more. So recognizing that process is a good thing, because like, that's that understanding, and the more we understand that, the more we can be like, oh yeah, I see you. I see you there thirsting. Okay, cool. And then we can just be like, oh wait, there's wonderful spring water everywhere. We can just take a drink, as opposed to the wonderful spring water only being caught from the special place that's hard to get, So yeah. I think Dhammarato talks about, like, I think it was Jack Daniels or something. He's like, if I wanted to get Jack Daniels or something, I'd have to go, to like Bangkok or something, be a long journey, But the water's right here, so it's easy enough to go take a drink.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but how do you find that nurturing, and seclusion, and sort of like, the difference there between that sort of like physically getting into seclusion, where there's perhaps like less phones or whatever, and then getting out of that kind of seclusion, but still maybe staying mentally seclusion, and the eyes on the Dhamma.
Yeah, I would say that the game, we'll call it, of getting into physical seclusion helps to train us for the game of getting into mental seclusion. It's basically the same practice in a sort of way, or
Yeah.
at least very. Um, and then the same thing is true, and it's like, okay, after we've spent some time getting into mental seclusion. Now that will kind of give us more practice of getting into physical seclusion again. But it'll also give us, like you were talking about, it'll give us that enthusiasm to become secluded. And a big part of what we're secluding ourselves from really is getting into hindrances, basically falling for the traps, falling for the Jack Daniels whiskey, or the pizza, or the songs, or whatever it might be. Those things aren't going to bring about genuine, long-lasting happiness and peace. They might be satisfying for just a little while, or while you're enjoying them, but if you listen to that song all day long every day, you would get sick of it.
Yeah.
If you the Jack Daniels all day long every day, you would die.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's it. And it's so good, yeah, to be able to see that and to be like, okay, you know what? With certain things, right? It's like, sure, can appreciate them, but at the end of the day, that's not where this happiness is to be found, right? So it's like that's like long lasting. There's no long lasting happiness to be found there, and that's in a way, that's a good thing. But yeah, that's cool. I like how you mentioned, Mikey, that it's like viewing it like a game, like either out of like physical seclusion or getting into that physical seclusion. It's still like a game, right? And we can play it, and that having that playful attitude when it's like, oh, becoming aware of any sort of hindrances. It's like having a playful attitude with that, having a nurturing attitude of, aha, I see you, and recognizing it and being like, oh yeah, no, this is a valuable thing to see these things, and also to see, oh yeah, that's not appealing to go there, right? So if like a song or any kind of thing pops in the head, it's not like, oh, we have to go chase that. But at the same time, yeah, it's like, also dropping that aversion as well, which is so, beneficial with the nurturing aspect, because it's not like, oh no, this is terrible, this experience, this is awful. Oh, how dare, it's so awful to have those cravings come up. It's like, oh no, it's seeing those cravings, being aware of them, and then we can abandon them joyfully, as opposed to being like, oh, it's terrible, right? And then it's like, oh no, I'm not meditating correct enough, or I'm not doing this enough in seclusion, and then getting fed up and then just going, stopping, yeah.
I'm really glad you bring this up. Before we did the recording, you'd you'd used the term, what was it? Uh, Exposure therapy.
Oh yeah.
I almost said shock therapy, which is kind of the same thing. uh, and what I'm seeing now is that when we have this nurturing attitude and nurturing wholesome thoughts, that is actually what prevents things that we experience from being so painful, or giving us dukkha,
Yeah.
basically. Um,
Yeah. It's funny, even pain itself becomes less painful.
yeah,
You start to just see it. Oh, there's pressure. It's just a sensation, right? So
or it's heat, or it's like tingly, or yeah, exactly, yeah.
yeah, yeah. In a
And
way, we can be, yeah,
that nurturing quality uh, makes it a lot easier for us to play with that pain, so that it's not then shock therapy whenever we experience the pain. It's not then exposure therapy when we experience the pain. It's actually more so like a very nurturing sort of thing. I almost don't even want to use the word therapeutic, but like
yeah,
could say like it's nurturing in a therapeutic sort of way.
yeah.
Like it's like you're in a spa, you know.
Yeah, no, it's quite, I mean, how one, can feel in just seclusion, just, resting with the breath, it can feel, yeah, just like that, just like a spa, where it's like, just that the body actually starts to feel good. Everything, yeah, comes together, and it's lovely. And it's cool to see that, and not getting like super pinpointed, like, oh, it has to be this exact way. Because I find the more I let go of like it having to be a particular way and just appreciating nature as it is, the more easy for it is to like arise. Like just coming back to that little bit of just enough satisfaction will do you. Just this. It's not a needing more and more of it. But ironically enough, it gets to be yeah, more and more relaxing. Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of cool. You were bringing up, yeah, like not needing it to be like this hardcore therapy or whatever. It's like, no, because we start to see too, even when there's like, this craving or whatever comes up, it's just like, oh, okay, cool, been there, done that, we've seen it, have experience with that. So it's very easy to just see it and give it up, right? It's like, cool. But yeah, having it be like a game, instead of it being like, oh, I've got to go sit for X time and it's really awful, just being like, hey, I can sit here and enjoy. Even changing the attitude towards it sometimes, like before and after, where it's like, oh, I've got to get through this, whatever time I set for it, and being like, oh no, we can sit there, we can just enjoy. It's like, it's cool. So yeah, changing the attitude towards it to a more nurturing one is helpful as well. Yeah. Wow. So nice to not want anything right now, not need anything.
There's not a thing wrong.
Yeah, everything's all right.
Yeah, that's the nurturing. Yeah, how, you know, I can't really think of a case where it's not worthwhile to have the thought be more nurturing. So this has been very enjoyable to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for bringing up this topic. Yeah, it's a good one to rest with, nurturing. Even working with the way, if we're using the verbal language internally, even I've noticed like internally speaking in a way which is, softer and gentler can be beneficial. Yeah. Like, yeah, everything's all right. No place to go, nothing to do. Just this is enough. Congratulations. Don't need to get anything, don't need to go anywhere. No need. Actually, I was watching, I think you brought it up, one with Eddie, a call you had, and you were talking about, yeah, that no need. I like to play around with that one.
Oh, no need. Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of like any kind of conceptual idea too that pops to mind. It's like I need more and more satisfaction, and then it's like, oh, no need for that, because if one needs it, they don't got it, right? It's not there. But it's kind of working with that subtractive aspect, where it's like, it's not necessarily like the absence of the dissatisfaction is actually the satisfaction that we're talking about. So
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
very reliable in that way. So
No,
nurturing that, yeah.
because it can be easy to see it differently. That satisfaction is still another goal.
Yeah, exactly. So just like lightening up and just being like, oh, no need, no need to be satisfied with it, whilst thinking that it's like, oh yeah, no, there it is, because it's like the idea of it, yeah. But it's, worthwhile to nurture that satisfaction, though. Get into
Right.
seclusion. I mean, that's like the sixth item of Anapanasati is the sukha. So developing. Oh, sorry.
That's that's where part of the practice does kind of act naturally.
Hmm.
And when what we're doing is getting rid of dissatisfaction and getting rid of dissatisfaction, that's what gives satisfaction room to grow,
Yeah.
or really present itself, or just be, because it's like, it is satisfying to be alive, you know?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's satisfying just to be alive when the hindrances, aren't present or we see them clearly and abandon them. It's like no, that's just like the underlying thing. It's just satisfying. So when there's no dissatisfaction, there's satisfaction.
Yeah.
When unease is dropped, there's ease. So it's like it's cool to rest with that. And yeah, this is why I find it so helpful though, working with like this is enough, so this is satisfying enough, right? And like again, setting that bar so low so that it can be hit every single time one realizes, but that dissolves the bar, so there's no bar. It's because again we have these high bars that we'll set of like this, super far out there satisfaction, and then we're like looking for it in some object. But then when we recognize that all these objects are coming and going, and we just throw it all back to nature, like Bhikkhu Buddhadasa says, it's like, oh no, this is it.
Yes. Indeed. This is it.
Yeah. But yeah, getting into seclusion or wherever we remember, practicing anapanasati, really nurturing, that practice, nurturing that, remembering to be aware with the inhale, with the exhale, being aware of like the quality of breath, it's wonderful, long or short, playing around with that. It's lovely. And that's what I really appreciate with this, because before, finding Dhamma, I was very much in the mind that you can't do anything with the breath. Like you can't play with it, you can't tamper with it. You got to just leave it be natural. And it became quite unnatural in the way that I was trying to make it natural. So now it's just like, oh,
Oh, that's
play.
no, I'm really glad you brought that up, because this kind of goes back to something I had talked about in a Sangha call, which is the word automatic.
Hmm.
Another word we could use is normal, right? Uh, so this is the practice a lot of people will fall for. Um, and, they fall for it in Buddhism and Christianity and Islam. Even atheists fall for this sort of practice. Is like, just uh, be normal. Basically, it's what they're telling themselves. They may not realize that. One moment. But yeah, it's not so much about like yes, it is worthwhile for the breath to just like be natural, and to uh, kind of be at ease, and for the practitioner to not have to have so much control on it. But in order to get there, it's not just, oh, well, I'm just going to keep breathing the way that I have been doing it,
Yeah.
basically, is what we're saying. Because things like the thoughts we're having, the feelings that we're clinging to, uh, the, the wants that we have, all of these sort of things can impact the body and impact the breath. And by changing to throw out the dukkha, to throw out the dissatisfaction that we're having with the feelings, the thoughts, the emotions, the senses that are arising, when we throw out the dukkha associated with those, that's when the breath really does become more natural. And whenever it's like, oh, taking a long breath is like very easy. There isn't this like tightness in the chest because somebody broke my heart or I didn't get what I want or etc. like this.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. And like that, bringing that back to that, like nurturing playfulness of like sometimes we can go a little bit more in with the breath and like intentionally make it longer. Sometimes we can kind of like just really relax even more with it, where we don't have to be so, because it just isn't, now it's naturally long, right? So we don't have to keep like forcing it, right? But just breathing in a way that's comfortable. Yeah. So there can be that degree of play. Yeah.
Yeah, I almost, with people that are newer to the practice, I do say, yeah, do the long breathing, but I've almost more and more been saying it similar to how Thanissaro says it, which is just like, what kind of breath feels really good right now?
Yeah.
Do that. Like breathe comfortably,
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a good pointer. Yeah, what kind of breath
And that
feels
that
comfortable?
is sort of a playfulness right there. That Thanissaro is pointing out. It's like, experiment, play around, like,
Yeah.
you'll see, like,
Yeah. Sometimes there's benefit in taking those short breaths too, and that can be relaxing and it can be like alternating. Yeah, it's funny in terms of like the practice, a very like easy way I'll sometimes sum up like anapanasati is just, relaxing breathing, wholesome thinking, because it's just like taking relaxing breaths, thinking wholesome thoughts, that's enough, and
yeah. Saticrate.
somebody trimming something.
Yeah, something's going on. I think this is for us to bring this to an end.
Yeah, yeah, no. But yeah, thank you so much for calling, Michael, and yeah, I really appreciate
Yes.
it. Yeah.
I'm very glad to be speaking with you, my friend. Yeah, let's talk again soon.
Yes. All right. I'll see you, and
Right.
till
Yeah,
next
thank
time. Peace.
you.